Question 1. Consider the multifaceted security risk management framework mandated by ISO 28000-2007 for a global logistics provider specializing in high-value electronics. The organization must implement a process that addresses potential security threats across its entire supply chain. Which of the following components, when integrated into the organization's security risk management framework, most effectively aligns with the core intent of ISO 28000-2007 for proactive and systematic security enhancement? Option A. Establishing a continuous cycle of threat intelligence gathering, vulnerability assessment, risk evaluation against defined security criteria, and the implementation of layered security controls, followed by regular performance monitoring and review of the entire process. Option B. Implementing a reactive incident response plan that focuses on immediate containment and recovery after a security breach occurs, with a secondary focus on post-incident analysis to identify root causes. Option C. Conducting an annual security audit to ensure compliance with industry best practices, with findings documented and shared with relevant stakeholders for informational purposes only. Option D. Developing a comprehensive insurance policy that covers all potential losses due to theft or damage, thereby transferring the financial risk to a third party. The correct answer is A. Establishing a continuous cycle of threat intelligence gathering, vulnerability assessment, risk evaluation against defined security criteria, and the implementation of layered security controls, followed by regular performance monitoring and review of the entire process. Explanation. ISO 28000-2007 emphasizes a systematic approach to security risk management within the supply chain. Clause 6. 2. 1. General. Of the standard mandates that an organization shall establish, implement, and maintain a security risk management process that includes identifying, analyzing, evaluating, treating, monitoring, and reviewing security risks. The core principle is to proactively manage potential threats and vulnerabilities that could impact the integrity, safety, and security of the supply chain. This process is iterative and requires continuous improvement. The standard draws upon established risk management principles, often aligning with frameworks like ISO 31000, but specifically tailors them to the context of supply chain security. Key elements involve understanding the organization's context, defining security objectives, and then applying the risk management process to achieve these objectives. The effectiveness of the security risk management framework is directly linked to its ability to anticipate, prevent, and mitigate security incidents, thereby ensuring business continuity and protecting assets. This includes considering various threat actors, methods of attack, and the potential impact on different stages of the supply chain, from origin to final delivery. Question 2. Following a significant security incident involving the diversion of high-value components due to a lapse in third-party vendor screening, an internal audit of the supply chain security management system, conforming to ISO 28000-2007, identified a critical nonconformity. The root cause analysis pinpointed the absence of a standardized, risk-based due diligence process for vetting all new logistics partners. To effectively address this and prevent future occurrences, what integrated approach best aligns with the principles outlined in Clause 8.3 of the standard? Option A. Implement a revised, risk-based due diligence procedure for all new logistics partners, coupled with a program for periodic reassessment of existing partners' security postures. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of all past security incidents to identify any common patterns, without specifically targeting the vetting process for immediate correction. Option C. Issue a formal warning to the non-compliant logistics partner and mandate immediate retraining of internal screening personnel without altering the existing procedures. Option D. Suspend all operations with third-party logistics providers until a new, unproven security protocol can be fully developed and mandated across the entire supply chain. The correct answer is A. Implement a revised risk-based due diligence procedure for all new logistics partners, coupled with a program for periodic reassessment of existing partners' security postures. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 28000-2007 Clause 8.3, concerning nonconformity, corrective action, and preventive action, emphasizes a systematic approach to addressing deviations from established security requirements. When a nonconformity is identified, the process mandates immediate action to control and correct it. Following this, A root cause analysis is crucial to understand why the nonconformity occurred. The subsequent step involves implementing corrective actions to eliminate the root cause and prevent recurrence. Preventive action, distinct from corrective action, focuses on identifying potential nonconformities before they happen and implementing measures to avert them. This proactive element is vital for continuous improvement of the supply chain security management system. The standard requires documented procedures for managing nonconformities and their associated actions, ensuring accountability and traceability. It also stresses the importance of reviewing the effectiveness of implemented actions. The scenario describes a situation where a security breach occurred due to inadequate vetting of a third-party logistics provider, leading to the compromise of sensitive cargo. This clearly constitutes a nonconformity. The immediate action would be to secure the compromised cargo and investigate the breach. The root cause analysis would reveal the deficiency in the vetting process. Corrective action would involve revising and strengthening the vetting procedures for all third-party providers and potentially re-vetting existing partners. Preventive action would involve establishing ongoing monitoring of third-party compliance and risk assessments to identify potential vulnerabilities before they manifest as breaches. Therefore, the most appropriate approach to address the identified nonconformity and its underlying causes, in alignment with ISO 28000-2007, is to implement a robust corrective action to rectify the vetting process and a preventive action to establish ongoing risk monitoring for all supply chain partners. Question 3. When evaluating the effectiveness of a newly implemented electronic seal system for high-value cargo in a cross-border logistics network, what specific aspect of ISO 28000-2007 Clause 8? 2. Monitoring and measurement. Should a supply chain security manager prioritize to ensure robust verification of the system's security performance and compliance with international trade regulations? Option A. Documenting the initial procurement costs of the electronic seals and comparing them against the projected savings from reduced cargo theft incidents over a 5-year period. Option B. Verifying that all personnel involved in the handling of the electronic seals have completed the basic security awareness training module as stipulated in the company's HR policy. Option C. Conducting regular customer satisfaction surveys to gauge perceived security levels of the electronic seal system among end recipients of the cargo. Option D. Establishing a process to track and analyze the frequency of electronic seal tampering alerts and correlate these events with specific transit routes and carrier performance data to identify systemic weaknesses. The correct answer is D. Establishing a process to track and analyze the frequency of electronic seal tampering alerts and correlate these events with specific transit routes and carrier performance data to identify systemic weaknesses. Explanation. Clause 8. 2 of ISO 28000-2007 focuses on monitoring and measurement within the supply chain security management system. This clause mandates that an organization should monitor and measure the performance of its security measures against defined security objectives. The selection of appropriate monitoring and measurement techniques is crucial. These techniques should be capable of providing reliable data to assess the effectiveness of security controls, identify potential vulnerabilities, and ensure compliance with relevant legal and regulatory requirements, such as those related to the transport of goods and customs declarations. The monitoring process should also consider the evaluation of security incidents and near misses to learn from them and improve future security performance. The frequency and methodology of monitoring must be determined based on the identified risks and the criticality of the supply chain elements. The aim is to gather objective evidence to support decisions regarding the enhancement of the security management system and to demonstrate its ongoing suitability and effectiveness. The output of this monitoring and measurement activity feeds directly into the management review process, enabling the organization to make informed strategic adjustments to its security posture. Question 4. A global logistics provider, Vanguard Freight, operating under ISO 28000-2007, is reviewing its security protocols for the transit of high-value electronic components through multiple national borders. Analysis of recent security incidents, including cargo diversion and unauthorized access at intermediate transit hubs, indicates a growing sophistication of criminal elements targeting this specific commodity. Vanguard Freight's internal audit team has identified that, while security measures are in place at origin and destination, the security of intermediate transit points and the intermodal transfer processes are less robustly defined and monitored, creating potential security gaps. Considering the principles of Clause 7, planning and realization of safe supply chains within ISO 28000-2007, what is the most critical step Vanguard Freight must undertake to address these identified vulnerabilities and enhance its supply chain security posture for this specific high-value commodity? Option A. Develop a new set of standardized security training modules for all personnel involved in the handling of electronic components, assuming that enhanced human awareness will inherently mitigate identified risks. Option B. Negotiate new contractual agreements with all third-party logistics providers involved in intermediate transit, stipulating higher penalties for security breaches without a prior assessment of the specific risks at each location. Option C. Immediately increase the frequency of physical security inspections at all origin and destination facilities, relying on existing protocols for intermediate transit points to maintain operational efficiency. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive, end-to-end risk assessment specifically for the high-value electronic components, focusing on identifying and evaluating threats and vulnerabilities at each stage of the transit, including intermediate hubs and transfer points, to inform the selection and implementation of appropriate security controls. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive, end-to-end risk assessment specifically for the high-value electronic components, focusing on identifying and evaluating threats and vulnerabilities at each stage of the transit, including intermediate hubs and transfer points, to inform the selection and implementation of appropriate security controls. Explanation: ISO 28000-2007, specifically Clause 7, outlines the requirements for planning and realizing secure supply chains. A fundamental aspect of this clause is the identification and assessment of security risks throughout the supply chain. This involves understanding potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their likely impacts on the continuity and integrity of the supply chain. The standard emphasizes a proactive approach, requiring organizations to establish processes for risk management that are integrated into all stages of supply chain operations. This includes design, procurement, manufacturing, storage, transportation, and delivery. The identification of security requirements is crucial and must be based on the outcomes of the risk assessment. These requirements then inform the development of security measures and controls. Furthermore, the standard mandates the establishment of objectives and targets for supply chain security, which are to be monitored and reviewed for effectiveness. The implementation of security measures should consider the specific context of the organization and its supply chain partners, ensuring that measures are appropriate and proportionate to the identified risks. This clause also touches upon the need for communication and awareness among all parties involved in the supply chain regarding security policies and procedures. The continuous improvement of the security management system is a core principle, requiring regular evaluation of performance and adaptation to evolving threats and operational changes. The successful application of Clause 7 ensures that security is embedded within the supply chain's operational framework, rather than being an afterthought. Question 5. When establishing a supply chain security management system, SCSMS, in accordance with ISO 28000-2007, what is the fundamental basis for determining the scope and nature of security controls to be implemented within a logistics network that handles high-value pharmaceuticals from manufacturing to final distribution point, considering potential threats like diversion, counterfeiting, and unauthorized access? Option A. A qualitative assessment of the perceived likelihood of security breaches based on historical incidents reported by competitors in similar sectors, without a detailed analysis of internal vulnerabilities. Option B. Adherence to the minimum security requirements stipulated by international trade agreements and general industry best practices for cargo handling, regardless of specific product risks. Option C. A comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential security threats and vulnerabilities specific to the pharmaceutical supply chain, leading to the selection of appropriate mitigation measures. Option D. The implementation of a standardized set of security technologies, such as GPS tracking and tamper-evident seals, across all supply chain segments, assuming these are universally effective against all potential threats. The correct answer is C. A comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential security threats and vulnerabilities specific to the pharmaceutical supply chain, leading to the selection of appropriate mitigation measures. Explanation: the ISO 28000-2007 Standard for Supply Chain Security Management Systems, SCSMS, emphasizes a risk-based approach to identifying, assessing, and mitigating security threats throughout the supply chain. Clause 4.3.1. Security Aspects and Risk Assessment mandates that an organization establish, implement, and maintain a process for identifying security aspects and assessing security risks. This process should consider the nature, scale, and characteristics of the supply chain, potential threats e.g., theft, diversion, sabotage, terrorism, vulnerabilities, and the potential impact of security incidents. The goal is to determine which risks need to be treated and to what extent. The standard does not prescribe specific security measures, but rather requires a systematic process to select and implement appropriate controls based on the identified risks. This aligns with the General Management System principles found in ISO 9001 and ISO 14001, focusing on continuous improvement and integration. The effectiveness of the SCSMS is measured by its ability to achieve security objectives and reduce the likelihood and impact of security incidents, thereby ensuring the integrity and continuity of the supply chain. The standard also requires consideration of relevant legal and other requirements, such as customs regulations and international security conventions, which form part of the context for risk assessment. Question 6. A global logistics provider, Trans Global Freight, is implementing an ISO 28000-2007 compliant security management system. They are in the process of developing their security plans for the movement of high-value electronics through multiple international borders. Considering the standard's emphasis on proactive risk management and integration with operations, which of the following actions would best demonstrate a robust approach to security planning and implementation as per ISO 28000-2007, while also acknowledging the necessity of adhering to international trade facilitation frameworks? Option A. Developing detailed operational security procedures for each stage of the supply chain, including specific physical and procedural controls, and ensuring these procedures are integrated into existing work instructions and training programs, while also cross-referencing relevant customs security initiatives like CTPAT and AEO. Option B. Conducting a one-time, high-level risk assessment of potential threats to the entire supply chain, and then implementing a generic set of security measures across all operations without specific integration into daily workflows. Option C. Focusing exclusively on technological solutions, such as GPS tracking and CCTV monitoring, without developing accompanying procedural controls or considering the human element in security implementation. Option D. Relying solely on third-party security audits to identify and address all security vulnerabilities, assuming their findings will automatically lead to effective implementation without internal planning or procedural changes. The correct answer is A. Developing detailed operational security procedures for each stage of the supply chain, including specific physical and procedural controls, and ensuring these procedures are integrated into existing work instructions and training programs, while also cross-referencing relevant customs security initiatives like CTPAT and AEO. Explanation: the core of ISO 28000-2007 is establishing a framework for managing supply chain security risks. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing their impact, and implementing controls to mitigate them. Clause 5.3.2 of the standard, Security Planning and Implementation, specifically addresses the need to integrate security measures into the operational processes of the supply chain. This integration ensures that security is not an afterthought, but a fundamental aspect of how the supply chain functions. The process involves defining security objectives, establishing security policies, and developing specific security plans that align with the overall business strategy and risk appetite. These plans should detail the security measures to be implemented, the responsibilities for their execution, and the resources required. Furthermore, the standard emphasizes the importance of considering relevant legal and regulatory requirements, such as those pertaining to cargo security, customs regulations, e.g., CTPAT, EO, and international conventions, when developing and implementing these plans. The effectiveness of these implemented controls must then be monitored and reviewed to ensure they remain relevant and adequate in the face of evolving threats and changing operational conditions. Therefore, a comprehensive security plan that is embedded within the supply chain's operational fabric, informed by risk assessments and legal obligations, and subject to continuous improvement is paramount. Question 7. When implementing security procedures and controls for a global electronics manufacturer's supply chain, which fundamental principle, derived from ISO 28000-2007, should guide the selection and prioritization of specific security measures to effectively address potential threats like cargo theft and intellectual property infringement, while also considering the diverse regulatory environments of multiple transit countries? Option A. A risk-based approach that prioritizes controls based on the likelihood and impact of identified threats, integrated across all supply chain activities, and aligned with the organization's security policy. Option B. A compliance-driven approach focused solely on meeting minimum legal requirements in each transit country, regardless of specific supply chain vulnerabilities. Option C. A reactive approach that emphasizes rapid response to security incidents after they occur, with minimal proactive prevention measures. Option D. A technology-centric approach that relies primarily on advanced surveillance systems and digital security, without addressing physical and personnel vulnerabilities. The correct answer is A. A risk-based approach that prioritizes controls based on the likelihood and impact of identified threats, integrated across all supply chain activities, and aligned with the organization's security policy. Explanation. The core of establishing effective security procedures and controls within a supply chain, as guided by ISO 28000-2007, lies in a systematic risk-based approach. This involves identifying potential threats, assessing their likelihood and impact on the supply chain's security objectives, and then implementing appropriate measures to mitigate these risks. The standard emphasizes that these controls should be proportionate to the identified risks and aligned with the organization's overall security policy. A key aspect is the integration of security considerations into all stages of the supply chain, from procurement and manufacturing to transportation and delivery. This proactive approach ensures that security is not an afterthought but a fundamental component of operational efficiency and resilience. When evaluating the effectiveness of these procedures, organizations must consider their ability to prevent, detect, and respond to security incidents, thereby safeguarding assets, information, and personnel. The selection of specific controls, such as physical security measures, personnel security practices, and information security protocols, should be driven by a thorough understanding of the unique vulnerabilities present in the specific supply chain context, including relevant regulatory frameworks like customs regulations and international trade agreements that may impact security protocols. The objective is to create a robust and adaptable security framework that can evolve with changing threat landscapes and business requirements. Question 8. A global logistics provider, Terra Firma Freight, is revising its record retention policy for its ISO 28000-2007 certified supply chain security management system. They handle various types of documentation, including customs declarations, shipping manifests, partner vetting reports, security incident logs, and training records for personnel handling sensitive cargo. Considering the principles of ISO 28000-2007 and potential legal obligations, what is the most comprehensive basis for determining the retention periods for these diverse records? Option A. A uniform retention period applied across all document types to simplify policy management and ensure consistent data availability. Option B. The longest possible period to ensure all historical data is available for any future, unforeseen audit or inquiry, regardless of relevance. Option C. A balanced consideration of statutory and regulatory requirements, contractual agreements, and the organization's operational needs for analysis and potential legal defense. Option D. The shortest possible period that satisfies immediate operational needs, thereby minimizing storage costs and data management overhead. The correct answer is C. A balanced consideration of statutory and regulatory requirements, contractual agreements, and the organization's operational needs for analysis and potential legal defense. Explanation. ISO 28000-2007 emphasizes the importance of maintaining records that demonstrate compliance with security requirements and the effectiveness of the supply chain security management system. Clause 4.5.3 Records specifies that organizations shall establish and maintain records to provide evidence of conformity to requirements and of the effective operation of the SCMS. While the standard does not dictate specific retention periods, it mandates that these records be legible, identifiable, and readily retrievable. The determination of appropriate retention periods for different types of records is a critical aspect of record management. This determination should be based on several factors, including legal and regulatory requirements, e.g., customs regulations, transportation laws, specific industry mandates, contractual obligations with partners and clients, the operational needs of the organization for ongoing analysis and improvement, and the potential for these records to be required for audits, investigations, or dispute resolution. For instance, records pertaining to the vetting of supply chain partners might need to be retained longer than temporary operational logs due to potential long-term liability or due diligence requirements. Similarly, records of security incidents and their resolution are vital for demonstrating corrective actions and preventing recurrence, thus influencing their retention duration. A robust record retention policy ensures that necessary information is available when needed, while also managing storage costs and data security risks associated with keeping records indefinitely. Question 9. Consider a multinational logistics provider, Global Freight Solutions, which operates across several continents and handles a diverse range of sensitive materials. Their ISO 28000-2007 certified supply chain security management system relies heavily on detailed records for risk mitigation and compliance. If Global Freight Solutions fails to implement a robust process for the regular review and updating of its security-related documentation, such as threat assessments, vulnerability analyses, and incident reports, what is the most significant consequence for their overall supply chain security posture? Option A. A reduced need for ongoing security training for personnel as foundational documentation remains static. Option B. An increased likelihood of receiving favorable ratings from third-party security auditors due to perceived thoroughness of initial documentation. Option C. A potential for overallocation of resources to security measures that are no longer relevant to current threats. Option D. A diminished capacity to accurately identify, assess, and respond to emerging security risks and vulnerabilities. Correct answer is D. A diminished capacity to accurately identify, assess, and respond to emerging security risks and vulnerabilities. Explanation: the effectiveness of a supply chain security management system, as outlined in ISO 28000-2007, hinges on the ability to maintain accurate and up-to-date records. Clause 4.5.3 of the standard specifically addresses the need for records to be legible, identifiable, and traceable. These records serve as evidence of conformity to requirements and the effective operation of the management system. When considering the impact of record keeping on the overall security posture, the primary concern is the reliability of the information used for decision-making, risk assessment, and audit purposes. Inaccurate or outdated records can lead to flawed risk assessments, incorrect implementation of security controls, and a failure to demonstrate compliance during internal or external audits. Therefore, the most critical aspect of maintaining records is their ability to accurately reflect the current state of the supply chain security measures and compliance status. This ensures that management has a clear and dependable basis for strategic planning and operational adjustments. The continuous review and updating of records, in line with changes in threats, vulnerabilities, or operational processes, are paramount to the system's ongoing integrity and its ability to adapt to evolving security landscapes. Question 10. A global electronics manufacturer, Teknova, is implementing ISO 28000-2007 principles to enhance the security of its high-value component supply chain. Their existing process involves multiple tiers of suppliers, international freight forwarders, customs clearance agents in various jurisdictions, and regional distribution centers. To effectively identify and mitigate potential security vulnerabilities, Teknova needs to establish a detailed understanding of the complete flow of goods. Which of the following activities is the most critical foundational step for Teknova in developing its supply chain security management system according to ISO 28000-2007? Option A. Conducting a detailed financial audit of all primary suppliers to ensure their economic stability and commitment to security protocols. Option B. Comprehensive mapping of all entities, transit points, and information flows within the supply chain to identify critical control points and potential vulnerabilities. Option C. Developing a robust crisis communication plan for immediate stakeholder notification in the event of a security breach or disruption. Option D. Implementing advanced technological surveillance systems at all company-owned manufacturing facilities and distribution hubs. The correct answer is B. Comprehensive mapping of all entities, transit points, and information flows within the supply chain to identify critical control points and potential vulnerabilities. Explanation: the core of establishing an effective supply chain security management system, as outlined in ISO 28000-2007, begins with a thorough understanding of the supply chain structure and vulnerabilities. This process, often referred to as supply chain mapping, involves identifying all entities, nodes, and transit points that contribute to the movement of goods from origin to destination. It is not merely about listing suppliers, but about visualizing the entire flow, including intermediaries, logistics providers, customs points, and even potential points of diversion or compromise. The purpose of this mapping is multifaceted. Firstly, it allows for the identification of critical control points, where security risks are most likely to occur. These could be locations where goods are transferred between carriers, areas with known security challenges, or stages involving sensitive materials. Secondly, it facilitates a risk assessment by providing a framework to analyze potential threats and vulnerabilities at each identified point. For instance, understanding the specific customs procedures in a particular region can highlight potential delays or opportunities for illicit access. Thirdly, it informs the development of appropriate security measures and controls tailored to the specific risks identified at each stage. This might involve implementing enhanced screening at certain ports, requiring specific security protocols from third-party logistics providers, or establishing secure transit routes. Without a comprehensive map, any security strategy would be based on incomplete information, leading to potential blind spots and an ineffective allocation of resources. The mapping process helps to contextualize risks within the actual operational flow of the supply chain, ensuring that security measures are relevant and proportionate to the identified threats. It is a foundational step that underpins all subsequent risk management activities within the ISO 28000 framework, enabling the organization to build a robust and resilient supply chain security program. Question 11. Consider a global logistics provider, Trans-Global Freight, that operates a complex network of warehouses and transportation routes. Their ISO 28000-2007 certified supply chain security management system is in place. The organization is reviewing its Clause 6.4 work environment requirements. Which of the following aspects, if not adequately addressed, would most significantly undermine the effectiveness of their established security measures and potentially introduce vulnerabilities within their supply chain operations? Option A. Inconsistent implementation of standardized cleaning schedules for office spaces. Option B. Insufficient provision of personal protective equipment for warehouse staff handling potentially hazardous materials. Option C. The absence of a formal policy for managing employee grievances unrelated to security matters. Option D. A perceived lack of management commitment to adhering to National Customs Declarations regulations. The correct answer is B. Insufficient provision of personal protective equipment for warehouse staff handling potentially hazardous materials. Explanation: ISO 28000-2007, Clause 6.4, titled Work Environment, mandates that an organization establish and maintain a work environment necessary to achieve conformity of its supply chain security management system. This clause requires consideration of factors that could impact the effectiveness of security controls and processes. These factors are not limited to physical conditions, but also encompass the organizational culture, human factors, and the operational context within which security measures are implemented. The objective is to ensure that the working conditions support the security objectives and do not inadvertently create vulnerabilities. For instance, inadequate training, poor communication channels, or an environment that discourages reporting of security concerns can undermine even the most robust security protocols. Therefore, a comprehensive approach to the work environment involves proactively identifying and managing these elements to foster a secure and vigilant supply chain. The standard emphasizes the need for a supportive atmosphere where security is integrated into daily operations and responsibilities. Question 12. Consider a global logistics provider, Transcontinental Freight, specializing in high-value electronics, They are developing their security plan in accordance with ISO 28000-2007. Which of the following elements, when incorporated into their security plan, most directly addresses the requirement to detail the implementation of security measures and controls for specific identified risks within their supply chain operations? Option A. A periodic review schedule for the security management system, focusing on the effectiveness of the overall system rather than the granular implementation of individual controls. Option B. A comprehensive overview of the organization's commitment to security and a general statement of security objectives for the entire supply chain, without specific risk control linkage. Option C. Description of the training programs for all personnel involved in the supply chain, emphasizing general security awareness rather than the specific application of controls to mitigate identified risks. Option D. A detailed matrix mapping identified supply chain security risks to specific preventive and detective security controls, including responsible parties and timelines for implementation, integrated with transport security protocols. The correct answer is D. A detailed matrix mapping identified supply chain security risks to specific preventive and detective security controls, including responsible parties and timelines for implementation, integrated with transport security protocols. Explanation. The security plan, as outlined in ISO 28000-2007 Clause 7. 4, is a fundamental document for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving a supply chain security management system. Its purpose is to detail how security objectives and requirements will be met throughout the supply chain. This plan must address identified security risks, define security measures and controls, assign responsibilities for security implementation, and establish procedures for monitoring and reviewing security performance. It should also encompass aspects such as personnel security, physical security, information security, and transport security, all tailored to the specific context and risks of the organization's supply chain. The plan is a dynamic document, subject to revision based on changes in risk assessments, operational activities, or regulatory requirements, such as those mandated by customs authorities or international trade agreements. It serves as the operational blueprint for achieving the organization's security policy and goals, ensuring that security is integrated into all relevant supply chain processes and that resources are allocated effectively to manage security risks. The development and maintenance of a comprehensive security plan are critical for demonstrating due diligence and commitment to security throughout the supply chain. Question 13. An international logistics firm, Global Transit Solutions, is implementing its ISO 28000-2007 compliant supply chain security management system. The firm operates in multiple jurisdictions with varying regulatory frameworks for cargo handling and customs declarations, such as the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, CTPAT, in the United States and the Authorized Economic Operator, EO program in the European Union. The management team is deliberating on the most effective approach to resource management, specifically concerning personnel competence for their security officers overseeing cross-border movements. Which of the following actions best aligns with the intent of ISO 28000-2007 Clause 5? 2. Considering the diverse regulatory landscape and the need for demonstrable competence. Option A. Mandating that each regional security manager designs and delivers their own bespoke training program, tailored to their local understanding of regulations and perceived threats, without a centralized oversight or standardization process. Option B. Relying solely on the existing general security training provided to all employees, assuming that specific knowledge of international regulations is the responsibility of individual security officers to acquire independently. Option C. Focusing exclusively on acquiring new technology and equipment to enhance physical security, with minimal investment in personnel training, believing that technological solutions will inherently compensate for any gaps in human competence. Option D. Developing a unified, competency-based training program that incorporates modules on general supply chain security principles, specific risk mitigation techniques relevant to common threats, and an overview of key international security regulations and their implications for Global Transit Solutions operations, supplemented by role-specific practical assessments. Correct answer is D. Developing a unified, competency-based training program that incorporates modules on general supply chain security principles, specific risk mitigation techniques relevant to common threats, and an overview of key international security regulations and their implications for global transit solutions operations, supplemented by role-specific practical assessments. Explanation. Clause 5.2 of ISO 28000-2007 emphasizes the organization's responsibility to determine and provide the resources necessary for the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of the Supply Chain Security Management System, SCSMS. This includes human resources, infrastructure, and the work environment. The effectiveness of the SCSMS hinges on ensuring that competent personnel are available, aware of their roles and responsibilities, and appropriately trained. Competence encompasses education, training, skills, and experience. The standard mandates that the organization shall determine the necessary competence for personnel affecting supply chain security, provide training, or take other actions to achieve this competence, and evaluate the effectiveness of the actions taken. Furthermore, it requires that personnel be made aware of the relevance and importance of their activities and how they contribute to the achievement of the SCSMS objectives. This foundational element ensures that the human capital within the supply chain is adequately equipped and motivated to uphold security protocols, thereby mitigating risks and fostering a secure operational environment. The focus is on proactive resource allocation and development to support the overarching security strategy. Question 14. A global logistics firm specializing in high-value electronics has identified a critical vulnerability: the potential for diversion of shipments during transshipment in a high-risk transit hub, leading to significant financial losses and reputational damage. The firm's risk assessment indicates that the likelihood of this event, coupled with its potential impact, exceeds their defined acceptable risk tolerance. Which risk treatment option, as defined by ISO 28000-2007 principles, would be the most direct and appropriate initial response to address this specific vulnerability? Option A. Implementing enhanced physical security measures such as advanced tracking systems and tamper-evident packaging for all affected shipments. Option B. Renegotiating contracts with all third-party logistics providers to include clauses that completely absolve the firm of any liability for cargo lost during transit. Option C. Ceasing all operations that involve transshipment through the identified high-risk hub until the security situation demonstrably improves. Option D. Formally documenting the identified risk and its potential consequences as an accepted operational contingency without altering current transit procedures. Correct answer is A. Implementing enhanced physical security measures such as advanced tracking systems and tamper-evident packaging for all affected shipments. Explanation. The scenario describes a situation where a significant threat to the supply chain has been identified, specifically the potential for unauthorized access to sensitive cargo during transit. The organization has evaluated the likelihood and impact of this threat, deeming it unacceptable. The objective is to select the most appropriate risk treatment option according to ISO 28000-2007 principles. Risk avoidance involves ceasing the activity that gives rise to the risk. Risk transfer shifts the risk to another party, typically through insurance or contractual agreements. Risk mitigation involves implementing controls to reduce the likelihood or impact of the risk. Risk acceptance means acknowledging the risk and deciding not to take action, usually because the cost of treatment outweighs the potential impact or the risk is within acceptable levels. In this case, the threat is to cargo security during transit. Implementing enhanced security measures such as tamper-evident seals, GPS tracking, and vetted carriers directly addresses the likelihood and impact of unauthorized access. This aligns with the definition of risk mitigation. While insurance could be considered for transfer, and ceasing transit would be avoidance, the most direct and proactive response to reduce the risk of unauthorized access to the cargo itself, as described, is to implement controls that make such access more difficult or detectable. Therefore, mitigation is the most fitting treatment. Question 15. When developing security objectives and measurable targets for a global logistics provider specializing in pharmaceutical transport, which of the following approaches best reflects the principles of ISO 28000-2007 for defining actionable and verifiable security performance indicators? Option A, aiming to increase the number of security training sessions conducted for warehouse staff by 25% annually, irrespective of whether this correlates with a reduction in security incidents. Option B, establishing a target to reduce the incidence of temperature excursions in refrigerated shipments by 10% over the next 12 months, directly supporting the objective of maintaining product integrity throughout the cold chain. Option C, setting a broad objective to enhance overall supply chain visibility without defining specific metrics or timelines for improvement. Option D, focusing on achieving a 5% reduction in operational costs for security personnel, even if it means potentially compromising the depth of security screening at transit points. The correct answer is B, establishing a target to reduce the incidence of temperature excursions in refrigerated shipments by 10% over the next 12 months, directly supporting the objective of maintaining product integrity throughout the cold chain. Explanation: the establishment of security objectives and targets within a supply chain security management system, as guided by ISO 28000-2007, requires a systematic approach that aligns with the organization's overall security policy and the specific risks identified. Security objectives are high-level, qualitative statements of intent, while security targets are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. SMART criteria used to gauge progress towards achieving the objectives. For instance, an objective might be to reduce the risk of unauthorized access to high-value goods. A corresponding target could be to decrease the number of recorded security breaches involving such goods by 15% within the next fiscal year. This process involves analyzing the context of the supply chain, understanding stakeholder needs, and evaluating the effectiveness of existing controls. The selection of appropriate metrics for targets is crucial, ensuring they directly reflect the desired security outcomes and can be reliably monitored. This iterative process of setting, measuring, and reviewing objectives and targets is fundamental to the continuous improvement mandate of ISO 28000-2007, ensuring that security efforts remain relevant and effective in a dynamic threat landscape. It is not about setting arbitrary goals, but about defining actionable and measurable steps that contribute to a more secure and resilient supply chain, considering factors such as regulatory compliance and operational efficiency. Question 16. A global logistics provider, TransCargo Solutions, is in the process of establishing its supply chain security management system, SCSMS, in accordance with ISO 28000-2007. The company operates across multiple continents, handling diverse cargo types, including high-value electronics, pharmaceuticals, and general goods. They have a complex network of warehouses, transportation mode, and intermodal transfer points. During the initial phase of implementing the general requirements of the standard, what is the most critical initial step the organization must undertake to ensure a robust and compliant SCSMS? Option A, obtaining immediate certification from a recognized third-party auditing body to validate their security posture. Option B, clearly defining and documenting the scope of the SCSMS, specifying the included supply chain segments, geographical areas, and operational processes. Option C, conducting a comprehensive risk assessment for every single node and link within their entire global supply chain simultaneously. Option D, developing detailed, prescriptive security procedures for every conceivable threat scenario across all operational facets before any system implementation. The correct answer is B, clearly defining and documenting the scope of the SCSMS, specifying the included supply chain segments, geographical areas, and operational processes. Explanation: ISO 28000-2007, Clause 4, outlines the general requirements for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving a supply chain security management system, SCSMS. A fundamental aspect of these general requirements is the organization's commitment to defining the scope of its SCSMS. This scope must clearly delineate the boundaries of the SCSMS, specifying which parts of the supply chain, which organizational units, and which activities are included. The standard emphasizes that the scope should be documented and communicated to relevant interested parties. This documentation is crucial for ensuring that all stakeholders understand the extent of the security management system's application and its limitations. The process of defining the scope involves considering the organization's context, its security policy, identified risks, legal and regulatory requirements applicable to its operations, and the needs and expectations of interested parties. Without a clearly defined and documented scope, the implementation and effectiveness of the SCSMS would be compromised, leading to potential gaps in security coverage and an inability to demonstrate compliance with the standard's requirements. The standard does not mandate a specific size or type of supply chain to be covered, but rather that whatever is covered must be clearly defined. Question 17. A multinational logistics firm, Global Freight Forwarders, is designing a new intermodal transportation system for high-value electronics. To align with ISO 28000-2007 principles, which foundational element must be prioritized during the initial design phase to ensure security, is intrinsically built into the system's components and operational processes, rather than being a later add-on. Option A. The development of a comprehensive incident response plan for potential security breaches. Option B. The procurement of advanced tamper-evident seals for all containerized shipments. Option C. The establishment of a security-conscious design philosophy that informs the selection and integration of all supply chain components and operational procedures. Option D. The implementation of a real-time cargo tracking system with geofencing alerts for all transit segments. The correct answer is C. The establishment of a security-conscious design philosophy that informs the selection and integration of all supply chain components and operational procedures. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 28000-2007 is the integration of security management into existing organizational processes, particularly those related to supply chain operations. Clause 4.3.2. Security policy mandates that the organization establish and maintain a security policy that is appropriate to the purpose, nature, and context of the supply chain and its security risks. This policy should provide a framework for setting security objectives and targets. Clause 4.4.1. Planning requires the organization to establish objectives and processes necessary to achieve them, considering its security policy and the results of risk assessments. Specifically, it emphasizes the need to integrate security considerations into all relevant supply chain activities from design and procurement through to delivery and disposal. The concept of security-conscious design is an outcome of this proactive planning and policy implementation, ensuring that security is a fundamental consideration from the outset of a supply chain structure and operation, rather than an afterthought. This directly addresses the need to embed security into the very fabric of the supply chain's components and processes, aligning with the standard's holistic approach to risk management and the prevention of security incidents. The other options represent either reactive measures, specific security controls that are part of a broader strategy, or elements that are not as directly tied to the foundational planning and policy requirements for integrating security into the design of supply chain components and processes. Question 18. Consider a global logistics provider, Trans Global Freight, that handles high-value electronics. They are implementing an ISO 28000-2007 compliant security management system. A key concern is controlling access to their secure staging area where shipments are consolidated before international transit. What is the most fundamental principle of access control within the context of ISO 28000-2007 that Trans Global Freight must adhere to for this staging area? Option A. Implementing a biometric scanning system for all individuals entering the staging area, regardless of their role or the perceived risk level. Option B. Granting access based on a documented risk assessment that identifies critical control points and applies the principle of least privilege to authorized personnel and systems. Option C. Relying solely on the presence of security guards at the entrance to the staging area as the primary means of access control. Option D. Providing unrestricted access to the staging area for all employees of Trans Global Freight to foster a sense of shared responsibility for security. The correct answer is B. Granting access based on a documented risk assessment that identifies critical control points and applies the principle of least privilege to authorized personnel and systems. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 28000-2007 regarding access control in supply chains emphasizes a risk-based approach to managing who and what can access specific points or assets within the chain. This involves identifying critical control points, assessing potential threats and vulnerabilities at those points, and implementing proportionate security measures. The standard requires organizations to define clear criteria for granting, reviewing, and revoking access based on roles, responsibilities, and the principle of least privilege. This ensures that only authorized personnel or systems can interact with sensitive goods, information, or infrastructure at any given stage of the supply chain. The effectiveness of these controls is then subject to regular monitoring and review to adapt to evolving risks and operational changes. This systematic process, aligned with the overall security management system, aims to prevent unauthorized access, theft, tampering, or sabotage, thereby enhancing the overall security and resilience of the supply chain. The standard also encourages consideration of relevant national and international regulations concerning cargo security and border control, such as those pertaining to CTPAT, Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, or EO, Authorized Economic Operator Programs, which often mandate specific access control protocols. Question 19. Consider a global logistics firm specializing in the transport of high-value electronics, which has identified a significant risk of product diversion at intermediate consolidation points. In line with ISO 28000-2007, Clause 7. 5. What is the most critical step the firm must take to implement and operate controls for this specific risk? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of all existing insurance policies to cover potential losses due to product diversion. Option B. Develop and deploy specific, documented procedures for cargo handling and verification at each consolidation point, coupled with targeted training for personnel involved in these operations. Option C. Implement a new, advanced GPS tracking system for all shipments, regardless of their value or transit stage. Option D. Establish a formal partnership with a cybersecurity firm to monitor for online illicit sales of diverted products. The correct answer is B. Develop and deploy specific, documented procedures for cargo handling and verification at each consolidation point, coupled with targeted training for personnel involved in these operations. Explanation: ISO 28000-2007, Clause 7. 5. Implementation and operation controls mandates the establishment and maintenance of documented procedures for managing identified supply chain security risks. This includes ensuring that personnel are competent for their security responsibilities and that security awareness is fostered. The clause emphasizes the need for appropriate security measures to be implemented and operated effectively to mitigate identified threats. The core principle is to translate risk assessment outcomes into tangible security actions, and to ensure these actions are consistently applied and understood by all relevant parties within the supply chain. This involves defining clear roles and responsibilities, providing necessary training, and establishing communication channels to maintain security vigilance. The effectiveness of these controls is intrinsically linked to the organization's ability to manage its security risks proactively and adapt to evolving threats, thereby ensuring the integrity and resilience of the supply chain. Question 20. When developing a security plan for a complex, multimodal international supply chain, which of the following approaches best aligns with the intent of ISO 28000-2007 Clause 7, particularly concerning the integration of diverse regulatory frameworks and the proactive management of emerging threats? Option A. Prioritizing the development of a single, overarching security protocol that mandates uniform controls across all transit points and jurisdictions, while deferring specific threat mitigation strategies to operational units based on immediate intelligence. Option B. Establishing a reactive security framework that responds to security breaches as they occur, documenting lessons learned for future policy adjustments, and investing primarily in advanced surveillance technologies without a comprehensive risk assessment of their applicability to the entire supply chain. Option C. Focusing solely on physical security measures at key nodes, such as ports and distribution centers, and relying on third-party certifications for compliance with international security standards, with minimal internal oversight on the overall security plan's effectiveness. Option D. Implementing a risk-based methodology that involves continuous identification and assessment of supply chain vulnerabilities, mapping these against potential threats from various sources including geopolitical instability and cyber attacks, and developing layered security measures that are adaptable to evolving regulatory landscapes and specific operational contexts. The correct answer is A. Prioritizing the development of a single, overarching security protocol that mandates uniform controls across all transit points and jurisdictions, while deferring specific threat mitigation strategies to operational units based on immediate intelligence. Explanation: ISO 28000-2007, specifically Clause 7, outlines the requirements for planning and realizing secure supply chains. A critical aspect of this is the establishment of security objectives and plans to achieve them. These objectives must be consistent with the organization's security policy and be measurable where practicable. The standard emphasizes the need to identify and assess security risks throughout the supply chain, considering various threat scenarios and vulnerabilities. Based on this risk assessment, the organization must plan and implement appropriate security measures. This includes defining roles and responsibilities, establishing communication channels, and ensuring the availability of necessary resources. The planning process should also consider legal and regulatory requirements applicable to the specific supply chain, such as those related to customs, transport, and trade facilitation, which can significantly impact security. Furthermore, Clause 7 stresses the importance of competence, training, and awareness for personnel involved in the supply chain to ensure effective implementation of security controls. The integration of security considerations into all stages of the supply chain, from design and procurement to delivery and disposal, is paramount for a robust security management system. The ultimate goal is to prevent security incidents, minimize their impact, and foster a culture of security awareness and responsibility across all participating entities. Question 21. Considering the principles of ISO 28000-2007 for supply chain security management, which of the following best defines the appropriate scope for an organization's security management system, SMS, when securing the global movement of high-value electronics? Option A. The scope should primarily focus on contractual security clauses with third-party logistics providers and compliance with internal company policies, irrespective of external regulatory requirements or broader supply chain vulnerabilities. Option B. The scope should be defined by the points where ownership of the goods changes hands, ensuring security measures are only applied during these specific transactional transitions. Option C. The scope should be limited to the direct transportation phases between manufacturing facilities and distribution centers, focusing on securing the physical movement of goods and excluding any upstream or downstream activities. Option D. The scope should encompass all stages of the supply chain, including sourcing of raw materials, manufacturing processes, warehousing, transportation, customs clearance, and final delivery, while considering relevant international security protocols and national regulations governing the movement of such goods. The correct answer is D. The scope should encompass all stages of the supply chain, including sourcing of raw materials, manufacturing processes, warehousing, transportation, customs clearance, and final delivery, while considering relevant international security protocols and national regulations governing the movement of such goods. Explanation: the question probes the understanding of how to characterize the scope of a supply chain security management system, SCMS, in accordance with ISO 28000-2007. The standard emphasizes defining the boundaries of the SCMS to encompass all relevant security aspects. When establishing the scope, an organization must consider its operational context, the specific threats and vulnerabilities it faces, the legal and regulatory requirements applicable to its operations, such as customs regulations or specific industry mandates like those related to hazardous materials transport, and the interdependencies with other entities in the supply chain. The goal is to create a robust SCMS that addresses security risks across the entire life cycle of goods and services within the defined supply chain. Therefore, a comprehensive scope definition would integrate an assessment of these elements to ensure that all critical touchpoints and security considerations are included. Other options are less suitable because they focus on specific, but not necessarily exhaustive, aspects of scope definition. For instance, focusing solely on contractual obligations might overlook critical regulatory requirements or inherent operational vulnerabilities. Similarly, limiting the scope to direct transportation links would ignore the security implications of warehousing, handling, and intermediate storage points, which are integral to the overall supply chain security. Question 22. An international logistics firm, Global Freight Solutions, is implementing advanced tracking and tracing technologies, including sensor-equipped containers and a blockchain-based ledger, to enhance its supply chain security in accordance with ISO 28000-2007. The Primary objective of these technological investments is to provide irrefutable evidence of cargo integrity and adherence to security protocols throughout its transit. Considering the core principles of ISO 28000-2007, what is the most critical aspect that these tracking and tracing technologies directly serve to fulfill within the management system? Option A. Ensuring compliance with internal company policies on technology adoption rather than external security standards. Option B. Achieving cost reductions through optimized route planning and reduced transit times, indirectly enhancing security. Option C. Providing verifiable evidence of cargo integrity and compliance with security measures to demonstrate the effectiveness of the management system. Option D. Facilitating real-time communication with all stakeholders regarding shipment status, regardless of security implications. The correct answer is C. Providing verifiable evidence of cargo integrity and compliance with security measures to demonstrate the effectiveness of the management system. Explanation. The fundamental principle behind ISO 28000-2007 is establishing and maintaining a robust supply chain security management system. Clause 7.4.3, titled Monitoring and Measurement, specifically addresses the need to monitor and measure the performance of the security management system. When considering tracking and tracing technologies, the primary objective is to verify the integrity and security of goods throughout their journey. This verification directly supports the system's ability to achieve its intended security outcomes and comply with regulatory requirements, such as those related to customs declarations and international trade facilitation, which often mandate verifiable provenance. Technologies like RFID, GPS, and blockchain provide data points that are monitored to ensure that goods have not been tampered with, diverted, or replaced with counterfeits. The effectiveness of these technologies is measured by their ability to provide accurate, timely, and tamper-evident information that confirms the security status of the supply chain. This aligns with the standard's emphasis on continuous improvement and the proactive identification of security vulnerabilities. Therefore, the most direct and critical link between tracking and tracing technologies and ISO 28000-2007 is their role in providing verifiable evidence of security and compliance, enabling the organization to demonstrate that its security objectives are being met and that the integrity of the supply chain is maintained as per the management system requirements. Question 23. Consider a global logistics company that handles high-value electronics and pharmaceuticals. To enhance its supply chain security management system, the company is developing a new security awareness program. Which of the following approaches would be most effective in fostering a deeply ingrained security culture across its diverse workforce, encompassing drivers, warehouse staff, and administrative personnel, while aligning with the principles of ISO 28000-2007 and considering potential regulatory impacts from frameworks like CTPAT? Option A. A continuous cycle of risk-based training, role-specific communication, incident reporting mechanisms, and regular program evaluation. Option B. A one-time, company-wide online training module covering general security best practices. Option C. A mandatory annual security policy review session conducted solely by the corporate security department. Option D. Periodic email newsletters highlighting recent security breaches in other industries without specific company relevance. The correct answer is A. A continuous cycle of risk-based training, role-specific communication, incident reporting mechanisms, and regular program evaluation. Explanation. The development of an effective security awareness program within a supply chain, as guided by principles aligned with ISO 28000-2007, necessitates a multifaceted approach. The program's success hinges on its ability to foster a security-conscious culture among all personnel involved in the supply chain, from procurement to final delivery. This involves identifying critical security risks specific to the organization's operations and the broader regulatory landscape, such as those related to cargo theft, insider threats, or the illicit diversion of goods, which might be informed by regulations like the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, CTPAT, or similar international security initiatives. The program must then translate these risks into understandable and actionable security behaviors for different roles within the supply chain. Key elements include regular, tailored training modules that address specific vulnerabilities and responsibilities, consistent communication reinforcing security policies and procedures, and mechanisms for reporting suspicious activities without fear of reprisal. Furthermore, the program should incorporate feedback loops to assess its effectiveness and adapt to evolving threats and organizational changes. The ultimate goal is to embed security as a core value, ensuring that every individual understands their contribution to maintaining the integrity and security of the supply chain. The most comprehensive approach involves a continuous cycle of risk assessment, targeted education, reinforcement of desired behaviors, and performance monitoring, which directly addresses the foundational requirements for establishing and maintaining a robust security management system. Question 24. When establishing a security management system for a global logistics provider specializing in high-value electronics, according to ISO 28000-2007, Clause 7. 1. What is the primary strategic consideration during the initial planning phase to ensure the integrity of the supply chain against potential threats like cargo theft and counterfeiting? Option A. Implementing advanced tracking and tracing technologies, such as RFID and GPS, to provide real-time visibility of all shipments, regardless of the threat landscape. Option B. Conducting extensive employee background checks for all personnel involved in the handling of goods, without a prior assessment of which roles pose the highest security risk. Option C. Developing a comprehensive risk assessment matrix that quantifies the likelihood and impact of identified threats across all transit nodes and partners, informing the prioritization of security controls. Option D. Negotiating contractual agreements with all third-party logistics providers that strictly mandate adherence to basic security protocols, without specific threat-based tailoring. The correct answer is C. Developing a comprehensive risk assessment matrix that quantifies the likelihood and impact of identified threats across all transit nodes and partners, informing the prioritization of security controls. Explanation: ISO 28000-2007, Clause 7. 1. Emphasizes the proactive planning of safe supply chains. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities that could compromise the security of goods or information as they move through the supply chain. The clause mandates the establishment of objectives and processes to achieve these objectives, ensuring that security considerations are integrated from the outset. This includes understanding the specific context of the organization and its supply chain operations, considering factors such as the nature of the goods transported, the routes used, the parties involved, and the relevant legal and regulatory frameworks, such as the International Maritime Dangerous Goods (IMG) Code for Sea Transport, or the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism (CTPAT) requirements for cross-border trade. A critical aspect of this planning is the development of a security policy that guides the organization's approach to supply chain security. This policy should be communicated and understood throughout the organization and by relevant interested parties. Furthermore, the planning must consider the resources required to implement and maintain the security management system, including personnel, technology, and training. The process should also incorporate mechanisms for reviewing and updating the security plan in response to changing threats, vulnerabilities, or operational conditions, aligning with the Plan Do Check Act (PDCA) cycle inherent in management system standards. The identification and assessment of risks are foundational to developing effective security measures and contingency plans. Question 25. Consider a multinational logistics provider, Global Freight Solutions, which operates across diverse geographical regions with varying security landscapes and regulatory frameworks, including compliance with the Container Security Initiative (CSI) and similar customs-driven security programs. Which of the following represents the most significant and encompassing benefit of Global Freight Solutions formally adopting and integrating the ISO 28000-2007 standard into its overarching supply chain security management system? Option A. A marginal reduction in insurance premiums for cargo theft, achievable through basic compliance with security protocols. Option B. Improved employee morale stemming from the implementation of new security awareness posters. Option C. Streamlined internal documentation processes that simplify audit trails for routine operational checks. Option D. Enhanced global credibility and a strengthened competitive advantage due to demonstrable commitment to internationally recognized security best practices. The correct answer is D. enhanced global credibility, and a strengthened competitive advantage due to demonstrable commitment to internationally recognized security best practices. Explanation: implementing ISO 28000-2007 for supply chain security management offers numerous benefits that extend beyond mere compliance. A primary advantage is the enhancement of an organization's reputation and credibility within the global marketplace. By adhering to a recognized international standard for security management, companies demonstrate a commitment to protecting goods, information, and personnel throughout the supply chain. This commitment fosters trust among business partners, customers, and regulatory bodies, potentially leading to increased business opportunities and a stronger competitive position. Furthermore, a well-implemented ISO 28000 system can lead to improved operational efficiency by identifying and mitigating security risks, thereby reducing disruptions, losses, and associated costs. This proactive approach to risk management, a core tenet of the standard, contributes to greater resilience and business continuity. The standard's emphasis on a systematic approach to security, including risk assessment and the establishment of appropriate controls, aligns with broader corporate governance objectives and can support compliance with various national and international security regulations, such as those pertaining to the CTPAT, Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, or similar authorized economic operator programs. The structured framework provided by ISO 28000 facilitates a continuous improvement cycle for security measures, ensuring that the organization remains adaptable to evolving threats and vulnerabilities. Question 26. When initiating the development of a supply chain security management system, SCSMS, in accordance with ISO 28000-2007, what foundational activity is paramount to ensuring the system's effectiveness and relevance to the specific operational context? Option A: conducting a comprehensive risk assessment to identify and evaluate potential threats and vulnerabilities across the supply chain. Option B: implementing advanced technological solutions for real-time tracking and monitoring of all shipments. Option C: establishing a detailed set of security policies and procedures that cover all potential security risks. Option D: developing a robust training program for all personnel involved in supply chain operations. The correct answer is A: conducting a comprehensive risk assessment to identify and evaluate potential threats and vulnerabilities across the supply chain. Explanation: the core principle of establishing a supply chain security management system, SCSMS, under ISO 28000-2007 is the proactive identification and mitigation of risks that could compromise the integrity, safety, or security of goods as they move through the supply chain. This involves a systematic approach to understanding the specific threats and vulnerabilities pertinent to a given supply chain, which can range from theft and tampering to diversion and unauthorized access. The standard emphasizes a risk-based methodology, meaning that the resources and controls implemented should be proportionate to the identified risks. Therefore, the initial and most crucial step in developing an effective SCSMS is a comprehensive risk assessment. This assessment informs all subsequent stages, including policy development, operational procedures, training, and performance monitoring. Without a thorough understanding of the potential security breaches and their likelihood and impact, any implemented security measures would be speculative and potentially inefficient. The subsequent steps of developing security policies, implementing operational controls, and conducting regular audits are all dependent on the foundation laid by this initial risk assessment. Question 27. A global logistics firm specializing in high-value electronics is developing its security procedures in accordance with ISO 28000-2007. They are particularly concerned about the risk of unauthorized diversion and theft during transit between manufacturing facilities in Southeast Asia and distribution centers in Europe. Considering the principles of establishing security procedures and controls, which of the following actions would represent the most foundational and effective step in addressing this specific risk profile? Option A: investing in advanced tracking technology that provides real-time location data for all shipments, assuming this technology alone will deter potential perpetrators. Option B: implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework to identify specific vulnerabilities at each stage of the transit, from factory gate to final delivery, and subsequently designing tailored security controls for each identified high-risk point. Option C: establishing a strict policy of random, unannounced cargo inspections at all border crossings, without prior analysis of specific transit route risks. Option D. Negotiating enhanced insurance policies to cover potential losses from theft or diversion, thereby mitigating the financial impact of security breaches. The correct answer is B. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework to identify specific vulnerabilities at each stage of the transit, from factory gate to final delivery, and subsequently designing tailored security controls for each identified high-risk point. Explanation: the core principle of establishing effective security procedures and controls within a supply chain, as guided by ISO 28000-2007, involves a systematic approach to identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks. This process necessitates understanding the specific vulnerabilities inherent in each link of the supply chain, from the origin of goods to their final delivery. Key considerations include the nature of the goods being transported, the modes of transport utilized, the geographic locations traversed, and the potential threat actors. A robust security management system requires the implementation of layered controls that address physical security, personnel security, information security, and procedural security. For instance, measures such as secure packaging, tamper-evident seals, access controls at loading and unloading points, background checks for personnel with access to sensitive cargo, and clear communication protocols are all vital components. The effectiveness of these controls is not static. It requires continuous monitoring, review, and adaptation to evolving threats and operational changes. This iterative process ensures that the security measures remain relevant and proportionate to the identified risks, aligning with the standard's emphasis on risk-based decision-making and continuous improvement. The goal is to create a resilient supply chain that minimizes the likelihood and impact of security incidents, thereby protecting assets, ensuring continuity of operations, and maintaining stakeholder confidence. Question 28. Considering the principles outlined in ISO 28000-2007, which of the following best describes the primary purpose of a comprehensive security plan within a supply chain management system, especially when navigating international trade regulations like the SAFE framework of standards? Option A. To solely document the procedures for responding to specific security breaches, such as cargo theft or tampering, without addressing proactive risk mitigation strategies. Option B. To serve as a marketing tool to demonstrate an organization's commitment to security to potential clients, without a direct link to operational security improvements. Option C. To systematically identify, assess, and control security risks across all stages of the supply chain, ensuring compliance with relevant international security standards and regulatory frameworks. Option D. To provide a detailed operational manual for customs officials to inspect goods, independent of the organization's internal security management processes. The correct answer is C. To systematically identify, assess, and control security risks across all stages of the supply chain, ensuring compliance with relevant international security standards and regulatory frameworks. Explanation: Clause 7.4 of ISO 28000-2007 mandates the establishment and maintenance of a security plan. This plan is a critical document that outlines how an organization will manage and mitigate security risks throughout its supply chain. It should encompass various elements, including the identification of threats and vulnerabilities, the implementation of security measures, the assignment of responsibilities, the establishment of communication protocols, and the procedures for responding to security incidents. The effectiveness of the security plan is directly linked to its ability to integrate security considerations into all relevant supply chain activities and processes, ensuring a consistent and proactive approach to security management. Furthermore, the plan must be regularly reviewed and updated to reflect changes in the threat landscape, organizational operations, and regulatory requirements, such as those related to the Container Security Initiative, CSI, or the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, CTPAT, which influence international supply chain security practices. The plan's development requires a thorough understanding of the organization's specific supply chain context, including its partners, transportation modes, and the types of goods being transported. It is not merely a procedural document but a strategic tool for embedding security culture and ensuring operational resilience. The plan must also address the need for training and awareness among personnel involved in the supply chain to ensure compliance and effective implementation of security controls. Question 29. When assessing the efficacy of a conducted supply chain security emergency drill, particularly in the context of ISO 28000-2007 requirements for risk management and preparedness, what constitutes the most fundamental element for demonstrating a tangible improvement in the organization's security posture? Option A. Meticulous documentation of all communication logs and the creation of a detailed incident report for archival purposes. Option B. The active participation of senior management throughout the entire duration of the drill and their public commendation of the response team's efforts. Option C. A comprehensive post-exercise analysis comparing actual performance against pre-established objectives and the subsequent implementation of identified corrective action. Option D. The successful evacuation of all simulated personnel and the complete containment of the simulated threat within the exercise's designated timeframe. Correct answer is C. A comprehensive post-exercise analysis comparing actual performance against pre-established objectives and the subsequent implementation of identified corrective actions. Explanation: the effectiveness of emergency drills and exercises in a supply chain security management system, as outlined by ISO 28000-2007, is directly tied to how well they simulate realistic threats and how thoroughly their outcomes are analyzed to identify and address vulnerabilities. Clause 7.3 of ISO 28000-2007 emphasizes the need for organizations to establish, implement, and maintain a process for managing security risks, which includes preparedness for security incidents. Conducting drills and exercises is a crucial element of this preparedness. The primary objective is not merely to go through the motions, but to validate the effectiveness of security controls, response procedures, and the overall security management system under simulated stressful conditions. A key aspect of evaluating these exercises is to compare the actual performance against predefined objectives and expected outcomes. This comparison allows for the identification of gaps in training, equipment, communication protocols, or decision-making processes. The subsequent analysis should lead to concrete corrective actions, such as revising procedures, enhancing training programs, or upgrading security infrastructure. Without a systematic evaluation against established criteria and a commitment to implementing improvements based on the findings, the drills become exercises in futility, failing to enhance the organization's resilience against actual supply chain security threats. Therefore, the most critical aspect is the systematic evaluation of performance against objectives and the subsequent corrective actions. Question 30. Consider a scenario where a global logistics provider, operating under ISO 28000-2007, experiences a sudden and severe disruption to a critical maritime transit corridor due to an unforeseen geopolitical event. This event has halted all vessel traffic, impacting the timely delivery of high-value components. To mitigate the cascading effects on its clients' production schedules and comply with its security management system, what is the most appropriate immediate action for the organization's security management team to undertake, in accordance with the principles of emergency preparedness and response within the standard? Option A. Temporarily suspend all operations along that specific transit corridor until official governmental advisories confirm the cessation of the geopolitical instability. Option B. Dispatch a crisis management team to the affected region to directly assess the situation and negotiate with local authorities for the resumption of traffic. Option C. Immediately initiate a comprehensive review of the entire supply chain security policy to identify systemic weaknesses that may have contributed to the vulnerability. Option D. Activate predefined contingency plans for the specific geopolitical event, focusing on rerouting affected shipments and communicating updated timelines to all stakeholders. The correct answer is D. Activate predefined contingency plans for the specific geopolitical event, focusing on rerouting affected shipments and communicating updated timelines to all stakeholders. Explanation: the core principle of ISO 28000-2007 regarding emergency preparedness and response is to establish, implement, and maintain processes that enable an organization to respond effectively to security incidents, including those that could disrupt the supply chain. This involves identifying potential threats, assessing their impact, developing appropriate response strategies, and ensuring that personnel are trained and resources are available. A key element is the integration of these preparedness and response measures with the overall security management system, ensuring that lessons learned from incidents or exercises are used to improve the system. Specifically, the standard emphasizes the need for documented procedures for emergency response, communication protocols with relevant parties, including law enforcement and regulatory bodies where applicable, such as customs authorities or port security agencies, and contingency plans for various scenarios like cargo theft, sabotage, or natural disasters affecting transit routes. The effectiveness of these plans is often validated through drills and exercises. Therefore, the most comprehensive approach to addressing a potential security disruption within the supply chain, as per ISO 28000-2007, is to ensure that the established emergency response plan is actively tested and refined through simulated scenarios. This proactive validation is crucial for confirming the plan's viability and the organization's readiness.